Voices of Creative Nonviolence, Jim Wallace and the Sojourners. You know those? Yeah. And in Islam, of course, it's found in Sufism, the poetry of Rumi, and I guess Llewellyn Vaughan Lee, who's the author of Darkening of the Light. It's a contemporary teacher. And she talks about the Asian religions. We have Taoism, which reveals kind of the reciprocal and complementary play of apparent opposites that gives rise to the phenomenal world. So that's this underlying Taoist thinking. And Taoism is what really gave Buddhism, I think, its connection to the natural world. In Hinduism, the stories, practices, and devotional songs that train the imagination to see the irrepressible vitality at the core of existence. So this kind of panoramic view, right, of the cosmos that we get from Hinduism. Buddhism, she feels really the big contribution is dependent co-arising. She says Buddhist teachings and practices deriving from our connectivity with all of life help us experience the world in terms of process rather than in terms of things to grasp or reject. They confront us with the fear, greed, and ill will at the root of human suffering. Meditations such as loving kindness, compassion, and joy in the joy of others further decondition old patterns of fear and competition, serving as a ground and compass in a fluidly interdependent world. The Buddha Dharma provides images of interconnectedness and models for a life of action. So this is really key and one of the differences between, let's say, Taoism or Hinduism and Buddhism, because it's dependent on this bodhisattva ideal. The bodhisattva, the Buddhist hero figure, she says, is one who deeply comprehends the dependent co-arising of all things. This one knows that there is no private salvation and therefore turns back from the gates of nirvana to re-enter samsara, the world of suffering, again and again, until every being, every blade of grass is enlightened. The choice to act for the sake of all beings, that intention known as bodhicitta, arises naturally when we open to our mutual belonging. And I think this is the unique, distinctive quality of our, at least Mahayana Buddhist practice, the concern with the suffering of others and the commitment to the relief of suffering. In Hinduism, you have a lot of fatalism. Yeah, bad things do happen, better luck next lifetime, may not be reborn as a cockroach. That's, there's less of this sense of care. And that was one of the things I think that most attracted me to Buddhism, is that it's deeply invested in the concept of care. So then she talks about indigenous spirituality and indigenous peoples, the shamanic traditions of America, Africa, Australasia, which she puts together, but I think are two things. Old Europe, Siberia, and Arctic regions resurface in our day with a similar message. Then she talks a little bit about goddess energy. These indigenous spirituality movements are often characterized by vision quests, ordeals of some kind, use of medicinals in ritual, which we've, of course, adopted. So I think there are, of course, recreational drugs that people use to reach exalted states of consciousness. That's a big movement now. There are many, many ways to do this, even without drugs, though. Extreme fasting is an example. You can have those kinds of exalted experiences in a lot of different ways. And there are medicinals that are part of religious rituals to heighten that experience. So today, this is a whole area of exploration and the relationships between spiritual tradition and mind-altering drugs. There are scientific research projects studying this very topic. And of course, many people independently dosing themselves under the illusion that the mind-bending visions and experience they have are somehow spiritual. If you're chasing spiritual experiences for your personal exaltation, all I can say is that you are seriously wasting valuable time you need for a true path in whatever tradition. To understand why, we need to consider the contrast between the ancient spiritual teachings and our Western worldview. So first of all, and Joanna Macy does not talk about this, but this really struck me. traditional religions exist in communal contexts versus Western individualization, you know, and this sense of appropriating, having, and getting, right? When we plunge into these ancient spiritual traditions from our perspective, we're kind of appropriating them for a kind of grasping, you know, or having, stripped of deep history and meaning because we don't have access to that. It becomes a personal path and a kind of, I think of it as a kind of a shopping model. So we don't, you know, we don't think about these various traditions as steeped in time, place, cultures, and connection. Rather, they seem like storefronts where we might step in and get something we need without any commitment to a path or a community, some soothing or some comfort, you know, some taste of the exotic, some patch of meaning because my everyday life is painful, boring, and feels meaningless. People speak about their experiences with indigenous religions, for example, at least as I've understood them, like someone shopping at Abercrombie and Fitch, going on a vision quest, a sweat lodge, an ayahuasca trip. It's just like a little vacation. But the deep longing is unfulfilled. It's a restless desire that sends one back out into the mall, wandering from one spiritual tradition to another, one teacher to another, one group to another. Because what most people don't realize is that they are not actually seeking personal meaning, personal revelation, individual enlightenment. What they are seeking can only be found together: connection, mutual care, shared meaning, a direction, a path we walk in community, a shared history, a part in a story much, much larger than we are alone. So this is, it reminded me of the Shinshin Ming, not grasping the deeper meaning, you just trouble your mind's serenity. As vast as infinite space, it is perfect and lacks nothing. But because you select and reject, you can't perceive its true nature. So we're constantly engaged, even in this, our spiritual life, with selecting and rejecting. I don't like that teacher, I believe this teaching, I like what this sounds good to me, right? We're constantly I go there because I feel good, there. But wisdom can't be plucked out of its cultural and relational and situational context. We cannot somehow acquire it as a personal possession. It is only apparent in use, in situations that call it forth. It manifests unbidden and unforced. But we have the materialistic view. There's a world of things, not a world of mystery and wonder. It's reductionistic. This is thanks to our sciences. We keep trying to break things down to their basic elements, as though we can understand them in that way. But you can't actually do that with spiritual practice or ancient traditions, which are mythic and poetic and holistic. So in a sense, we want to tear the wings off butterflies to see how they fly. This creates a separateness that is so hard to bridge because it's baked into our language, our concepts, our relationships, our conditioning, our schooling, our sports, and on and on. So even things like couples therapy are not really about a couple. They're about two people who are pissed off at each other, and they have this separate sense, right? If only he would, So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, it's like, imagine you're in a playground and you're tossing a basketball around, and up comes to you someone from a completely different country, and let's say Mongolia, and says, with their rudimentary English, what are you doing? Oh, I'm playing, shooting baskets. And so this person says, well, teach me, I want to learn American ways. And so you kind of show them, and they make a basket after a few tries, and they're delighted. Now I know American ways. And you're like, you hardly begin to know where to explain. There's a game with rules. There's rules, and there are time limits. There are penalties, scoring. It has sports arenas. There are athletes and fans. There are leagues. Leagues are a thing. Coaches, doctors, assistants, trainers. It's broadcast on television. Television is a kind of a thing. It's a big business. It involves many cities, many teams. It has a history, traditions. And even that is still only a tiny fraction of the American life this visitor is completely oblivious to. That's what happens when we go somewhere and sit in a sweat lodge for an hour, right? So we don't recognize the social support that's part of every spiritual tradition, because that's not our American way. We don't recognize the relationality, practices and rituals and meanings that are invariably immersed in the relationality in which they are experienced. So we know this from our ceremonies here. This is what actually binds a community together, because it's this shared experience and it has meaning. It doesn't mean that there are not tensions, disagreements, and conflicts within those communities or those traditions, but their long history provides the means for accommodating them and resolving them peacefully. So I was thinking about this African tribe we studied when I was studying anthropology, and which completely fascinated me, this whole idea. In that tribe, illness is not an individual affliction. It's a social rupture. Something gone awry in the community. And so the entire village would gather by the bedside of the one who was ailing. There would be a ritual ceremony of confession, repentance, and repair for the community together, whatever had been ruptured, whatever had happened. Their cure rate was exactly equal to that of modern medicine. That really surprised me, right? But they had a social sense of illnesses represent some social disruption. Yeah. So there are all these cultural meanings. There's a cosmic worldview, a sense of wholeness with the whole cosmos that's part of these traditions, a sense of ancestors, and I was thinking, well, personally, my ancestors are not really anything to celebrate. They're very ordinary beings living ordinary lives, not the outsized myths of the ancients, who did these heroic deeds and created these mythic experiences. So, but that's a part of those traditional spiritual practices also. So there are these sacred rituals that are steeped in lived experience, because we're eating together, we're fishing together, we're hunting together, we're making baskets together. So those rituals have a profound experience of connection in deep, deep meaning. So the other function that's served in these communal contexts is a kind of contextualizing of your experience. So when my first opening was a terrifying vision that shattered me, I could see Joko and Daison, and she reassured me that she had had a similar terrifying experience. She threw a shoe at her teacher and said, "I am not meditating for this." I did not throw my shoe at her, but not only teachers, but the community container allows us to move through dark or frightening places on our path, to resolve grief, to meet our anger, understand our cruel parts, foster our compassion, and meet our own history and conditioning with some healing and growth and understanding, because we have this support, right? And this container in which we understand this is what our endeavor is. So does this make sense? This is the one thing that I think Macy kind of missed, was that these things are situated. And we try to pluck out some little experience from them, as though that can give our lives more meaning. And I think that's a dangerous assumption, basically, because basically you waste time, and wasting time is dangerous. So I didn't want to just talk this whole time. I really would like to find out your experience, what other religious traditions you've been part of, and what that felt like to you, what you felt was nourishing about it, what you might have realized wasn't complete for you in some way, and then so I have a couple of questions that I'm just curious about myself, to know, because people come and sit with us. We don't always know what their background is or what they've explored before. So I would love to hear anything that anyone wants to share about. Yes.
Let me get you the device.
Talking disc. Yeah, this resonates so much with me, and the thoughts that were going through my mind is that, um, there's a difference between community and being in community and having friends. It's not the same thing, and and I think I sense this in so many people that they might have friends or a friend group or something like that, and so that, but um, there is a one, I don't know, there's a tremendous value and wonder in the kind of community that gathers around a spiritual tradition or whatever. And some people know I'm part of a Catholic community that I've been part of for 40 years, and I step back and wonder about that, because I've lived in the same place, I've been able to do that.
Yeah.
But also I reflect a lot, and since I've been part of this community and tradition, I reflect on it even more. That it is, it's just a tremendous blessing, to have that, and it's something I kind of long for, my daughter and her, and just lots of younger people, and because I don't feel like we have language for what this is and what needed means, So this whole sense of community is, and the, kind of, I don't even know what the right words for it, but the value of it, is something that the world, I feel like our world needs, and we don't, in America at least, we don't have, I think sometimes people, like, I think of this, my son-in-law, he would be reluctant to join a church or something. It's like, well, I don't believe in that, so it's like, there's a set of, it's like a legal contract. You believe in the resurrection, you believe in the, the virgin, whatever, and it's really not about that. It's not, it doesn't matter in a way. So anyway, I just feel this so deeply, just the centrality of community in any kind of practice. It's really not me by myself and my insights, anyway, so I feel very grateful for community.
Well, you pointed to something really important, which is that we don't have the language, right, that we need for this. I was thinking another tribe that we studied in anthropology had no nouns. All of their language was process language. It was all eating, even an apple is like apple being. And it was so interesting to think about how that would shape your worldview if everything is just a process. And it was so hard for the anthropologists who were studying them, like, get their minds around this fact that there was no solid object, like, I'm going to drive the car to the village, or like, that wasn't it. There was just driving. And so I thought that it really pointed out to me how our language is so subject-object oriented, so much so that when my sister was studying mothers, Japanese mothers and American mothers for her dissertation or thesis, she discovered that American mothers take their babies out and they point things out. There's a tree, there's a man, there's a bicycle, right? That's what we do, right? Japanese mothers take their babies out, unwrap them and say, feel, smell, it's all experiential. That has to shape a mind in a different way, right from the very beginning. Yeah. So that's really important. This the languaging of what it is that we're doing is very important. Of course, that's sort of my thing. I'm always trying to reflect what it is we think we're doing here. Yeah. Oh, we've got a hand up here.
Alan.
Thank you. Peg, your story made me remember when my first child was born. He was just, tiny, newborn. I took him out to see the chickens. and he's just looking globally at the chicken wire. I mean, sort of. He's just looking globally. But anyway, yeah, I practiced something called Siddha Yoga for a long time. It's Indian religion. It was actually based in Kashmir Shaivism, and guru based. And what wasn't enough is it was about individual enlightenment, and I just got to a point where I could see that was we'd come to an end with that. And that's it. That's what I had to say.
Yeah, that's great. Rosemarie?
Yeah, I grew up Catholic, and in terms of community, I would say not so much. Went to Catholic schools, and the church itself was a haven for me, but it was pretty much a solo situation. And when there were troubles in my life, it would not have been the place that I would have gone for solace or community. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, interesting. These different experiences that we have, right? These different practices. Yes.
I retired 18 years ago, and my community before that was definitely art and art departments, and then in St. Louis, the community of artists. And then when I retired, I wanted a spiritual community. And so it was going to be Judaism or Buddhism, and I ended up doing both.
Both.
I fell into both in St. Louis and then here. And it was nice, especially photography was really great because there was no commercial interest in art photography at that time. The best photographers couldn't get more than $100 for their work, So it was just a religion basically, and we did it, and there was no promoting yourself,
Right.
In the same way that we don't promote ourselves to get money.
Right. And no competitiveness really, because there was nothing to compete for.
We just supported each other and loved each other, and did all kinds of projects together. It was really nice. So I don't know, what else am I supposed to say?
What else did you want to say?
Oh, I'm going to give a talk on Sunday about my drawing and how that's been an entrance into understanding this practice, basically. And so I'm thinking a lot about that. How do we connect without discursive thought? Has really been my challenge. And it comes naturally to me in this art, way. And it comes very unnaturally with words. So then in my art, I combine both. And now I'm rewriting all these words and realizing that what I said yesterday wasn't the same as what I believe today. So I'm using strikeouts and parentheses and brackets and all kinds of things, which has been fun the last few days. So.
Sandra?
Yes, so my experience, I grew up in the Catholic tradition. I was just thinking about your question. So for me, I think the Buddhists found me. It's not that I was, the first time that I was exposed, it was more than 30 years in Mexico. So when I found the meditation, all that, it really opened my eyes. And I was already, since I was little, noticing the rigidity in Catholicism, more in Latin America. America is more rigid and more traditional. And really opened my eyes and after that I started searching. And I never looked for a community because in my culture it's very different. We are not so individualistic, it's more all too much
You're
problem together.
already in community, yeah.
Yeah, it's already in community until I found in Apamada what I found here in this community and the tradition of the Zen Buddhists. But now I start learning more what is the Christianity, Richard Rohr, through you and through Flynn. So I started noticing a little more this other area on the mystic Christianity that I was not introduced at all. So, and there is some little parallel with Zen Buddhists that is really open my eyes more, no? To instead to be this or that, when you say the Jin Jin Ming, I was like in that this is better than this, and it's now I'm finding myself more like accepting all the difference between Christianity, mystic Christianity, and Zen Buddhism, and the overlapping into those traditions.
You're discovering that you don't need to select and reject, like this Shinchen Ming says, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So more inclusive.
More inclusive, right?
I feel like we could have this conversation for hours. There's so much here, so I don't even know where to. There's so much that I want to dip into, but I think there's a lot in your talk, and I think what I'm really gathering from it is related to one of my favorite books, which is Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism by Chogyam Trungpa. And he talks about how we can often kind of go shopping, like you were saying, for, like the shiny things, and we got that's the materialism piece. It's like, oh, I've got this great practice, it's gonna do this for me or whatever, and it's just attainment. And I also think I'm thinking of like my spiritual journey, which I talked about in my Way Seeking Mind talk. I've been very deeply immersed in Christianity and Islam and Sufism and Kashmiri Shaivism, which I was excited to hear you say that, Ellen. And yogic traditions and all these things. And there was an orientation I used to have around seeking, and I was looking for it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like what we were talking about a couple of days ago with Joanna and Macy, like, there's no place to land really.
Yeah.
It's a process, it's a journey. And how, for me, it's opened up into this, I'm so appreciative of the journeys that I've been on and that I'm still on.
Yeah.
And it's not so much about like trying to find it. That's one thing. Another thing that maybe we could come back to, I don't know, but around enlightenment, which is a whole other thing, because I'm so curious about this, because we don't, in our tradition, we tend not to focus on enlightenment so much, or at least, at Appamada.
Right.
And yet, the Buddha became enlightened, and that was what sparked all of this.
A lot of people forget that what the Buddha said was, I, together with all beings, am enlightened.
And he wasn't separate from that enlightenment.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, how do we orient to that?
Yeah. Well, immediately in our individualistic culture, we turn it into a personal quest. Rather than seeing that's the inherent nature of all things, that they're always unfolding that awakening being. That's reality, is that awakening beingness. And we have grown these big brains, and we have all kinds of ideas and concepts about that. But that's why I think Zazen is so important, because it's like you're clearing this space where that becomes manifest, like where that becomes the obvious state of things, the obvious process of things, always unfolding themselves, That's, right in our chant, life as it is, the only teacher. It's that bare reality.
Yeah, and I think of it like this vow frees all beings.
Yes.
I'm saying that from my subjective experience, recognizing the whole. And I wonder if enlightenment is kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Could you see it as some individual attainment?
You could.
You could, maybe, but that wouldn't be enlightenment.
Yeah, right.
You're
missing the fundamental point.
It would just be success at my quest.
Yeah.
It would be something else altogether, because it still has an egoic core. And And once you realize there's no I doing it, there's nothing for you to attain, right?
Yes, I agree, John Eric. We could really stay here all morning. This is so amazing to hear about the different backgrounds. And I grew up just like, Easter, Christmas, Presbyterian. But then I went off to boarding school, got out of South Texas, and sat in a classroom. And my beautiful teacher, Mr. Torrey, rest in peace, he threw open all these doors by talking about the transcendentalists. And I know they get a bad rap, Emerson and self-reliance, but when they talked about, Emerson's in the woods, he's like, I'm a transparent eyeball. He was talking about ego eradication. And he was not saying, let's go off and all be self-reliant as in solitary people.
Right.
His whole thing was letting go of self so that he could connect better with the people around him. And he and Thoreau and the Alcotts, they were all in deep discussion all the time that came out of community. So I think the Transcendentalists became my religion in a way. But again, that led to community because my girlfriends in boarding school, we still are talking about it 30 years later. And we're still out in the woods to be transparent eyeballs. So I think that I'm very fascinated by how there's this misunderstanding about the individual. Like, you have to sometimes go deep into your own singularity to drop it. And
That's
so
right.
that is, I would say, my closest thing to religion.
And they were very influenced by the Buddhists.
Yeah, they were. And they got there without doing drugs,
Right.
too. So
I think from that first Parliament of Religions, 1893, I think was when that happened, and that was hugely influential in New England. It opened the doors to interest in a lot of different things, Hinduism and, all kinds of spiritual practices and seances. And it just like ignited a fire in that sort of puritanical culture.
what was the name of that meeting again?
Parliament of Religions.
Yeah.
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 And it brought, Buddhist teachers, Hindu teachers, everybody from all over the world to come and talk about religion.
Yeah.
It must have been quite interesting, those conversations.
Shocking, especially given this is the birth of our country and people are still into their Puritan mindsets. And
Yeah, and now we have
pretty
the
radical.
residue of that as kind of our country's karmic burden. It's just, it will not die. So much judgment, so much, narrowing, so much contraction. Yeah.
but I won't go on about it, but I was reading a biography and trying to understand Thoreau and Emerson's friendship. And Emerson, as all strong-willed, fascinating people can be, he got so annoyed because Thoreau, he said, he's always talking in paradox. It's giving me a headache. So they also had their squabbles and things to work out too.
And the invisible women that were supporting them.
Yeah.
It's funny. Okay, anyone else? Okay, I have 7 more questions, but we won't get to them today. Sadly, I would love to. We'll stop and have Syverson. I'll save these other 7 questions for later. But as you said, we could talk about this all day long, right? And I really wanted to hear from you just a little bit of your experiences and whether this particular topic touched anything in you, in exploring that a little bit together. Tomorrow, Nate will be talking about the miracle of mind. And so we'll move into the contemporary sphere and what we understand about that. And And I'll just drop this little pebble into the pond. One of our Zen teachers in our Zen Teachers Association has ordained an AI as a priest, a Zen priest, which is something to think about. Okay.